September 12, 1943, Bougainville, Solomon Islands. The Pacific sky is a dull sheet of gray, broken only by streaks of rising sun over the jungle canopy. Inside the cockpit of a brand new Chance Vought F4U Corsair, Lieutenant Harold Hawk Jensen of the U.S. Marine Corps tightens his harness and adjusts the trim tabs. The engine, an 18-cylinder Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp, growls like a caged beast beneath the blue steel cowling. "Black Sheep Squadron, check in," comes the voice of Major Gregory Pappy Boyington over the radio. His tone is calm, deliberate, even as static crackles in the humid air. 2, roger. 3, ready. 4, locked and loaded. 8 Corsairs, gleaming in their fresh navy blue paint, bank eastward toward enemy-held territory. Below them, the Solomon Islands sprawl like emerald shards scattered across the sea. Their mission? Intercept a formation of Japanese Zeros spotted near Kahili Airfield. For many of the men, this is the Corsair's baptism by fire. The aircraft's bell wings and massive propeller make it look like a monster, elegant yet intimidating. It's fast, almost too fast, and grounds crews whisper that it's cursed. The Navy had even refused to operate it from carriers, calling it too difficult to land. But today, the Marines will test whether whistling death, as the Japanese would later call it, is curse or salvation. Jensen scans the horizon. A glint catches his eye. 12 silver specks closing fast. "Tally-ho! Bogies, 11 o'clock high!" he shouts. The sky erupts. Machine guns chatter from the Corsair's 6.50 caliber Browning M2s, speaming tracers that arc through the morning haze. Jensen dives, the Corsair howling as air rushes through its wing root intakes, producing that eerie, rising wail that will soon become infamous across the Pacific. A Zero swings behind him, its nimble frame twisting like a serpent. Jensen yanks back the stick, the Corsair claws for altitude, engine roaring. The Zero overshoots. He squeezes the trigger, the grounding guns thunder. The Zero blossoms into flame, spiraling into the jungle below. "Christ almighty," Jensen breathes. "This thing climbs like a rocket." The fight lasts 7 minutes. When the smoke clears, 5 Zeros are down. The Corsairs have lost none. Back at base, Boyington lands and removes his helmet, sweat dripping down his temples. "They thought this bird was too heavy," he mutters, grinning. "Till Tokyo had just learned how to fly." The Corsair has drawn blood, and the legend has begun.
November 1943, Rabaul, New Britain. The Pacific War has shifted into full roar. Above the smoking volcanic ridges of Rabaul, black columns of anti-aircraft fire claw at the sky as U.S. Navy and Marine squadrons hammer Japan's most fortified base in the South Pacific. Lieutenant Jensen's Corsair, call sign Blue 6, cuts through the chaos. Tracers streak past his canopy like angry fireflies. "Tighten up, boys. Stay with me," Boyington's voice crackles over the radio. Below, the ocean glints like molten glass, dotted with burning ships. The air smells of oil, cordite, and the salt of the sea. Corsairs dive in pairs, their gull-shaped wings slicing the air. The howl of their engines, the shrieking whistle of death, echoes across the battlefield. A swarm of Japanese A6M Zeros rises to meet them. Sleek, light, and agile, the Zeros have long dominated the Pacific skies. But today, the balance shifts. 2 o'clock, high, bandits inbound, someone yells. Jensen rolls left, spotting 3 Zeros diving from the sun. They close fast, too fast. He slams the throttle forward. The Corsair's R2800 engine surges, and the aircraft lunges upward with brutal force. At 400 knots, the Corsair is no longer prey, it's a predator. The Japanese pilots, once contemptuous of the American fighter, now find themselves struggling to match its speed. The Corsair climbs higher, loops behind them, and dives with crushing velocity. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat! 6.5 caliber guns rip through the sky. 1 Zero explodes in a burst of flame. The second veers away, smoke pouring from its tail. From the ground, Japanese troops look up in disbelief. The once feared Zeros are being torn apart by this new blue-winged beast. Word spreads quickly among pilots and infantry alike. A nickname whispered in dread: Whistling Death. In the pilot's ready room that evening, the men sit in silence, sipping lukewarm coffee. Boyington walks in, holding a cigarette between his fingers, and taps the map pinned to the wall. "That's right, we're getting gifts from the Army." Laughter breaks the tension. Someone adds, "and she screams before she kills." The Corsair.
February 17th, 1944, Truck Lagoon, Caroline Islands. At dawn, the sea lies deceptively calm, a vast turquoise mirror stretching to the horizon. Beneath it, the Imperial Japanese Navy's prize anchorage slumbers, ringed with coral reefs and anti-aircraft batteries. Above, faint contrails begin to form, heralds of destruction on wings of blue. From the carrier USS Bunker Hill, a deck officer waves the next flight forward. The Corsairs roll to position, engines snarling. Lieutenant Commander Sam Porter, a veteran with the Jolly Roger Squadron, checks his gauges one last time. Fuel, ammo, oil pressure, all green. "Launch Corsair Group Delta," the air boss bellows. The catapult slams Porter back into his seat as the aircraft roars off the deck, wings catching sunlight like polished blades. The fleet below vanishes into mist. The formation climbs, tight and silent, over the endless Pacific. Truck Lagoon appears ahead, paradise turned fortress. Radar stations light up, sirens wail. The first anti-aircraft bursts explode among the clouds. "Stay low after the dive," Porter shouts. "Hit their fuel dumps first." The Corsairs break formation. One by one, they roll inverted and dive, sun glinting off their curved wings. The wind screams past the canopies. Each aircraft howls with that haunting, metallic whistle, the sound that sends Japanese soldiers diving for cover. Bombs tumble free. Fire blossoms below, tearing through hangars and docked cruisers. Smoke boils upward in columns 1,000 feet high. Porter strafes a line of trucks along the airfield, his gun spitting tracers that rip through steel and flesh alike. A Zero rises from the inferno, banking hard toward him. Porter pulls up, rolls right, and pushes the throttle past Redline. The Corsair surges ahead. The Zero can't follow. He loops over and drops behind his pursuer. One burst, short, precise. The Zero disintegrates midair, scattering debris across the lagoon. "Scratch one bogey," Porter mutters. By sunset, Truck Lagoon burns from horizon to horizon. 40 ships sunk, hundreds of planes destroyed. Japanese command calls it the day the sea caught fire. From that day forward, the Pacific no longer belongs to the rising sun. In every mess hall and radio broadcast, the Corsair's legend grows. To the Japanese, it's a demon that wails before it kills. To American pilots, it's a loyal warhorse, fast, furious, and forgiving only to those who master her. And yet the war is far from over. Ahead lies Iwo Jima, Okinawa, kamikazes. The Corsair's true test is yet to come.
April 6, 1945, Okinawa, Ryukyu Islands. The sky above Okinawa burns orange at dawn. Smoke from artillery and naval bombardments curls upward like black banners over the island. Below, the largest amphibious invasion of the Pacific War churns the sea into white foam. Tens of thousands of Marines and sailors pushing toward the blood-soaked beaches. High above, the F4U Corsair once again owns the heavens. Captain Harold Jensen, now a seasoned ace with 20 kills to his name, guides his formation of Corsairs along the island's western coast. Their mission: intercept kamikazes before they reach the Allied fleet. The radio crackles with clipped urgent voices. "Command all fighters, multiple bogies inbound, bearing 210. Looks like, God help us, dozens of them." Jensen wipes sweat from his brow and scans the horizon. Black dots emerge from the rising sun. Japanese aircraft, flying low and fast, each packed with a 500-kilogram bomb. "Kamikazes," Jensen says grimly. "Let's go earn our pay." The Corsairs dive. The air fills with the shrill metallic howl, whistling death descending once more. Below, Japanese pilots whisper final prayers. They see the blue demons streaking toward them, sunlight flashing off their gull wings. Fear flickers, but their hands stay steady.
They intend to die. Jensen's guns roar first. His tracers find a zero. It bursts apart, a fiery cross against the clouds. His wingman, Lieutenant Owens, takes out another, but moments later, a kamikaze breaks through and plunges into the destroyer USS Bush. The explosion rattles even the Corsairs in the sky. "Christ almighty," Jensen mutters. "They just keep coming." For 3 straight hours, the air battle rages. Corsairs and Hellcats dueling suicidal pilots in an inferno of smoke, flak, and falling steel. The Double Wasp engines scream, wings shuddering from recoil. The Pacific sky becomes a graveyard of metal and flame. By nightfall, the fleet still stands. The Corsairs return to base, wings pitted with shrapnel, fuselages scorched. Ground crews swarm over them like surgeons over wounded soldiers. Captain Jensen climbs down from his cockpit, face smeared with sweat and soot. He lights a cigarette with trembling hands. "Those boys," he says softly, staring toward the sea where smoke still rises. "They were kids, just like us." The Corsair had met its deadliest foe not in a duel of skill, but in a storm of desperation, yet it held the line. Over Okinawa, it became more than a fighter. It became a shield. When the battle finally ends, the cost is staggering. Thousands of kamikazes destroyed, hundreds of Allied ships damaged or sunk, and countless young lives erased. But through it all, the Corsair's blue wings never failed. The men who flew it would carry its scream in their memories forever, a sound that meant survival, vengeance, and the price of victory. And as Japan's empire crumbled beneath fire and steel, the whistling death roared into history, the sound of the Pacific turning blue with flame.
August 15, 1945, Yokosuka Bay. The war is over. A gray silence settles over the Pacific. Battleships that once thundered with fire now lie still, their decks lined with sailors staring toward a distant horizon, a horizon they never thought they'd live to see again. On the carrier deck of the USS Bew, Rose Lieutenant Jensen stands beside his Corsair, helmet tucked under his arm. The ocean wind whips through his hair. Around him, laughter and tears mingle as word spreads through the fleet. "It's over," a mechanic whispers, his voice cracking. "It's really over."
August 15th, 1945, Yokosuka Bay. The war is over. A gray silence settles over the Pacific. Battleships that once thundered with fire now lie still, their decks lined with sailors staring toward a distant horizon, a horizon they never thought they'd live to see again. On the carrier deck of the USS Bungara, Lieutenant Jensen stands beside his Corsair, helmet tucked under his arm. The ocean wind whips through his hair. Around him, laughter and tears mingle as word spreads through the fleet. "It's over," a mechanic whispers, his voice cracking. "It's really over." Jensen looks up at the gull wings that had carried him through hell, from Bougainville to Okinawa. He runs a hand along the scarred fuselage, feeling the cold rivets under his palm. "You got me home, old girl." To him and to thousands of others, the F4U Corsair is more than plane. Over the next years, the Corsair's legend only grows. It dominates the skies in Korea, strafes jungles in Indochina, and serves proudly under the flags of allies across the globe. Pilots call it the last gunfighter, the apex of piston era. But in the hearts of those who flew it in World War II, it remains something purer. The sound of its engine, that deep, guttural thunder, became a symbol of hope amid despair. Its whistle, once a harbinger of death to the Japanese, became the song of American air power rising from the ashes of Pearl Harbor. Today, when a Corsair takes flight at an airshow, the crowd feels a chill. The wings dip, the propeller spins, and that haunting wail cuts through the air once more. For a brief moment, time folds back, and the Pacific burns blue again. A voice murmurs, "They mocked it. They called it the Ensign pickup. They said it would never be fleet quality." And when it did, across island chains, across oceans,
across history. The F4U Corsair, whistling death. The scream that silenced the rising sun.
Present day, Planes of Fame Air Museum. The hangar doors groan open with the slow, solemn grace of a monument. Morning sunlight spills across the polished metal of a single F4U Corsair, its wings. A mechanic in his 60s wipes down the cowling, pausing to trace the faded white letters, Marines. Beside the aircraft stands a frail old man in a wheelchair, Harold Ha-Ni. A young pilot in a flight suit kneels beside him. "Sir, they're starting her up in a few minutes. Would you like to be out on the tarmac?" Jensen nods. They roll him closer as the ground staff clears the tarmac. The Pratt & Whitney. The heat rolls off it in waves. It's been 80 years. The Corsair taxies slowly down the tarmac, gathering speed. The Corsair banks sharply, its whistle echoing across the airfield. The pilot circles once more, then dips its wings in salute. Jensen salutes back, a tear rolling down his cheek. Above the hangar, the whistle fades into the distance, the final cry of whistling death.
Pacific Ocean, somewhere between the Solomons and Okinawa. A deep wind moves across the empty sky. The ocean below glimmers the same way it did 8 decades ago, as if nothing has changed. Yet everything has. The islands that once shook under the roar of radial engines now rest quiet, their beaches washed clean of the fire that once consumed them. In the vast silence, you can almost hear it, faint, ghost-like, the rising, metallic cry of the whistling death. Every sound from those years, the pounding of the Pratt & Whitney engines, the clatter of Browning guns, the desperate radio calls, still echoes in the stories of those who lived. The Corsair's legacy is more than the metal it was built from. It's the story of transformation, from mockery to mastery, from too heavy and too clumsy to the. When Japanese pilots first saw it in 1943, they laughed. When they saw it again in 1944, they prayed. For the Americans, the Corsair became a symbol of resolve. They learned its rhythm, the lag in the engine response, the pull in a tight climb, the surge in a dive that could tear the wings from lesser planes. And once they understood it, from the steaming jungles of the Solomons to the bloodied waves of Okinawa, the Corsair carved her name into the very air of history. Today, her engines rest. The men who flew her are nearly all gone, but her scream, that haunting, beautiful, terrifying whistle, still rolls through the halls of aviation history. It reminds us of the cost of courage, of the skies turned blue with flame, of the youth who climbed into cockpits knowing they might never come down. And somewhere, in that endless sky, a Corsair still flies, wings spread wide, carving an azure sky. You can almost see it. Sunlight flashing across its curved wings, the faint shimmer of heat trailing behind it. You can almost hear it, that rising, whistling wail that once made emperors tremble and soldiers look up in awe. The scream of whistling death, the sound of a war, and of the men who won it.
June 7th. The sun hangs low over Oahu, its golden light dancing across the gentle waves of the harbor. The same waters that once boiled with fire and smoke now shimmer with peace. Families strolling the pier, veterans seated in folding chairs, children waving speakeasies. And in the sky above them, a single sound begins to. At first it's a murmur, distant and soft. Then it builds, the deep-throated rumble of a Pratt & Whitney R2800, R-Thor 30. It's Buno now, the Corsair. He circles once above the USS area. Down below, in the front row, an elderly veteran, his uniform jacket heavy with medals, stands slowly, his hand trembling as he salutes. His name tag reads HJ. For a moment, time bends. The ghosts of Bougainville, Rabaul, Truk, and Okinawa seem to gather in the heat shimmer above the water. They watch the Corsair carve through the sky, its gull wings slicing sunlight into shards of memory. Reeves banks low, his foretall. He pulls the Corsair back into a soaring climb. The engine's note echoes across the harbor like a signal from another time. For a silence, the Pacific seems to hold its breath. The war is long over. The men are gone, the machines are relics, but the stories and the sound endure. The whistling no longer. Every time its engine stirs, it calls back an age when courage was forged from steel and sky. The Corsair may rest in museums and memories now, but when her whistle rises again over oceans and islands that once burned, it reminds the living that freedom has a sound. The Pacific whistle then. Tell Tokyo, it learned how to fly.
Eternal Pacific. Beyond the horizon, where history fades into legend, the sea is endless, silver, calm, and vast. Somewhere above it, the memory of a Corsair still flies. The war is long past, the guns silent, the skies clear. Yet when the wind rushes through the palms of the Solomons, when the surf hisses over the coral reefs of Okinawa, some hear. They call it imagination, but to those who remember, it's something more. It's the ghost of whistling death. In the years after the war, the Corsair became a teacher. Its design, the bent gull wings, the monstrous 13-foot propeller, the massive double-wasp engine, inspired generations of engineers. Jet-age pilots studied it to understand lift and torque, climb and drag. Historians called it a monster warbird. To veterans, it was simply home. Men like Jensen, Boyington, and Porter faded into time, but their stories never did. They became words etched in museums, voices replayed in documentaries, faces captured in black and white photos that smell faintly of oil and dust. In those images, you can still see it, the gleam of sunlight on the Corsair's curved wing, the calm focus in a pilot's eyes moments before takeoff. The Corsair's story isn't about war alone. It's about redemption, of a machine once mocked, of men once doubted, of a nation that was scorned before it proved itself. The Japanese once called it the bastard wing, the whistling death. Today, a handful of them still fly, restored by hands that never saw combat but understand reverence. When they take to the air, crowds fall silent. Veterans stand. Children look up, awed by a sound older than them. That whistle, eerie, metallic, alive, is no longer a cry of war. It's a song of memory, a sound that outlived the conflict, a sound that carried a generation through fear. And as long as the Pacific wind still moves, the Corsair will fly, not in battle, but in remembrance. The ocean will catch her echo, the clouds will carry her shadow, and somewhere high above the islands she once defended, a blue-winged phantom will reign. The war has ended. The legend never will.